U.S. President Joe Biden has outlined his vision for U.S. foreign policy. In his first major policy speech, Biden sought to reassert U.S. global leadership, rebuild alliances, and reverse Donald Trump's America First agenda. He announced an end to support for the war in Yemen and a halt to the withdrawal of U.S. troops from Germany.
The United States is ready to engage with the world again. That was Joe Biden's message from the marbled halls of Washington's State Department. For Biden, this means foreign policy must be grounded in a multilateral world rather than a defence of America's interests that puts America first.
America is back. Diplomacy is back at the centre of our foreign policy.
So the US will once more try to find solutions to the world's problems. Like in Yemen, dubbed the world's worst humanitarian crisis. Years of conflict have destroyed much of the country, killing hundreds of thousands of people and leaving more near starvation. The US has given tacit backing to one side of that war. No more, says Biden.
This war has to end. And to underscore our commitment, we are ending all American support for offensive operations in the war in Yemen, including relevant arms sales.
Biden also said his administration's diplomacy will involve a clearer defence of democracy. He called on Myanmar's generals to surrender power. And he signalled a tougher tone on Russia than the last administration, urging the release of Kremlin critic Alexei Navalny and pledging he'll keep Vladimir Putin's Kremlin in check.
Days of the United States rolling over in the face of Russia's aggressive actions, interfering with our elections, cyber attacks, poisoning its citizens, are over.
For Biden, strengthening the US's stance on Russia and China will mean reaching out to Washington's old allies in Europe and elsewhere. He ordered a freeze on US troop withdrawals abroad, including from the US's bases in Germany. The Trump administration wanted to pull out nearly 10,000 troops. Biden will depart from that plan.
America and alliances are our greatest asset. And leading with diplomacy means standing shoulder to shoulder with our allies and key partners once again.
This administration comes to power with diplomats' morale low and its alliances chafing. Restoring both will be a huge challenge.
DW's Peter Röhle-Dahl is monitoring this story for us. Peter, what sort of vision did Biden lay out for America's place in the world?
Well, what we saw there was really Biden, trying to turn the page on 4 years of isolationism and really restore diplomacy as the U.S. main tool of choice. It was a speech that in some ways reminded me of former President Teddy Roosevelt's famous phrase, speak softly and carry a big stick. Biden very clearly promising to counter advancing authoritarianism, singling out Russia and China, saying, really putting them on notice with regards to human rights abuses, singling out China's unfair trade practices. So a very clear signal there that the times are changing, or really we're returning to or turning our backs on the policies that we saw during the Trump administrations, the courting of more authoritarian regimes. Also, talking about restoring America's moral leadership there, saying, that he wanted a strong support for LGBT rights, but also restoring America's refugee program, admitting a lot more refugees into the United States. And I think from a European perspective, really sending a clear signal to allies that the U.S. is standing shoulder to shoulder with its allies, that it will pursue a multilateral approach. And I think that's going to be music to a lot of people's ears here.
Well, talking about transatlantic allies, Biden mentioned Germany several times in his speech, a real departure in tone from his predecessor.
Yeah, I mean, Biden there singling out Germany as one of the U.S.'s top allies, and that was very notable. He also announced a freeze on the withdrawal of more than 10,000 troops from the U.S., a very controversial move by the Trump administration that had ruffled a lot of feathers here in the U.S., and also maybe signaling that Biden will continue to look to his transatlantic allies to also keep Russia at bay. It's also a signal of Russia, I think, to tell him that the U.S. is not going anywhere. But it's not a complete sigh of relief for Germany, maybe just yet. Biden also signaling that he will continue some of the pressure campaign that we saw during Trump to get its allies to spend more on their military, to spend more on NATO. So the U.S. So Germany not completely off the hook, and really also signaling to its allies that they need to pull their weight on the global stage, but that the U.S. is right there with them. So a very important speech, I think, from both the U.S. but also a global perspective here.
Peter, thank you very much. As always, DW's Peter Röller-Dahl.